The following podcast may be explicit. One Joe Young presents Adventures from the Shed, a tabletop RPG podcast. You can find us online at adventuresfromtheshed.com. It's time for Mickie, JJ, Kurt, Chris, and Joe to finish up world and character creation. In this episode, we go through the Dresden Files Accelerated book step by step to complete our character creation and end up with ready-to-play characters. Enjoy the podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Shed from Adventures from the Shed.
You can find us online at
adventuresfromtheshed.com.
Where else?
Stitcher Radio.
Stitcher Radio.
iTunes. Any RSS feeder.
Podbean.
Bing.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
everyone.
You get the RSS
Podbean.
feed from Adventure from the Shed, too.
Dude, I use RSS Radio, and I've got 13 or 14 podcasts, and they just update automatically. And you know what the number one podcast is in my feed? Number one.
What?
Yes.
Adventures from the Shed.
Ooh,
You
that's
can also
a cool
stick it in your
podcast.
VLC player.
You can put it in VLC as well. That's correct.
You know what I love,
download it
Joe?
and
You know what I love?
Listen to it offline, yeah.
I love when my RSS updates in the morning. 'Cause
Yeah.
I have it to update once a day, and it scrolls and scrolls and scrolls and scrolls, and it was like new Adventures from the Shed adventure.
Nice.
And then I look at it, and I'm like, "Whoa! It's Call of Cthulhu, Episode 3."
I was in that.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, man, I got an hour of my entertainment
so
taken
behind.
care of today.
All right, now speaking of who's who, we're going to start with Mr. Who started us off. Go ahead and say hi.
I am Kurt.
Okay, Kurt.
I tend to be vocal.
All right, who's next? Pick.
This is Chris.
And then?
Hi, it's Mickie.
And then?
And then it was JJ!
Cletus.
Yeah, I think he did in Cletus accent.
And
right
I'll
there.
follow it with I am Joe.
I like to think of Cletus as what was the guy in Dukes of Hazzard that was
Cooter.
Cooter. I think of Cletus as Cooter from Dukes of Hazzard.
Cletus is
the
cooter.
accent that you're talking about that I just did was I was pretending to poop and talk while I did that.
All right,
And-
Cletus is always pretending to poop and talk.
Sometimes it's not best to look behind
Cletus
the
always
curtain.
has to take it.
Yeah. Like I was
Awesome.
squeezing my sphincter tight while I talked there.
I don't want to know how the sausage is
Quick
made.
aside. So this is our third hour we've been playing, and JJ the entire time has been playing in a kilt.
Yes, that's
a
true.
rock solid, almost paramilitary black kilt.
Yeah,
and I think we should
utility
put it
kilt.
up on our Adventure from the Shed Facebook page.
I would call it a tactical kilt.
It's actually called a utility kilt.
Yeah.
It is a brand
Kilt.
name.
But that's all good. But can we put it up on our Facebook page? Just JJ in his kilt.
You sure can, Kurt. You took the picture.
But
you have Facebook.
From the bird's eye view, is
Go
that what we
for it.
want?
Well, we
or
might
worm's
or
eye
might
view?
not get an
Worm's
upskirt.
eye view.
So you
that
want to
would
look
be
up
the
the
baby
tower?
bird's
so
eye
like
view.
underneath.
We may or may not get an upskirt. But regardless, you should go to Adventures from the Shed Facebook page.
Yes.
Check us out.
Yep.
And at a minimum, you're going to see JJ in a kilt.
Yeah, and
if you
Kurt will
guys-
have that posted today, but you won't hear about it until the day after. Anyway,
Yes.
it'll be up there.
And if you guys come to Dragon Con, you can buy your own kilts.
Dragon kilt.
Dragon
Selling
kilts.
kilts?
They sell kilt there.
All right.
So,
That's
Mickie,
all,
tell us
everything
what
there.
we did in the last couple of hours.
So in the last few hours, we further developed our characters. We learned about our high concepts, our troubles, as well as some other, other aspects. And I got a frog in my throat.
That's all right. That could be an aspect.
That
of
is
it.
an
That could be a trouble. Always
Uh-oh.
a frog in your throat.
What else did we do? That was pretty much it.
Yeah.
We did. Well, we talked a little bit more about the world because while we were talking about the characters, and that got us to the point where we now know each character's high concept, their mantle, their trouble, and another aspect. Or in JJ's case, he had a couple extras, and we have an idea of characters' names and general appearance. So that all was covered in the first 2 hours.
But Mickie has
of,
changed her name 4 times since the
Well,
last episode.
it's remained Mora.
But it's more or less the same than it was before.
Yeah, or it's
That would be a cool last name, the same as it was before.
Same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was.
Right now, it's more the same. So
And
more of
I'm-
the Psalm.
Mora de Sam.
I am literally infatuated with that name. That is so much cooler than more
Are
or
you going to do
less.
French accent even though you're
More of the
Cherokee?
same.
Do you want a French accent?
I mean, well, we had that very brief French
Yeah.
Only if you
accent.
could wear the
It
maid
was
outfit at the
awesome.
same
But
time.
it didn't
I think
show
that's
up
what's
It
in
going
didn't-
for.
recording,
was never-
unfortunately.
Oh, then absolutely you should do the French accent.
That was the missing episode.
That
Oh, yes.
Do you want me to do a little French accent?
Oh, je pense que I would be in love with the French accent.
Do you want Mora to speak
No,
like this?
Kurt, it's a French accent. You can't speak French. You can't say I think so.
Yeah.
You have to actually just use a French accent with English
I
words.
think that this would be
Turn
fantastic.
Yes, there you go.
Fantastic. Do you like the brute force? Or do you like it a little slow?
I like it a little slow. with a little bit of the leather and the
You know,
whip and the dungeon porn.
this is a good segue because we're about to talk about approaches. Now, in the Dresden Files Accelerated game, approaches are, for me at least, analogous to abilities or skills or traits or what have you from other systems. Essentially, you think in other systems, strength, dexterity, constitution, what have you. Within the Dresden Files Accelerated, approaches are flair, focus, force, guile, haste, and intellect. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about what those are, but the task for our players right now, while we look up some of those definitions, is to start thinking about how you're going to assign numbers for your character. There are no random elements to character creation in the Dresden Files Accelerated game. What you have is essentially an array. You're going to be able to choose one approach at +3, 2 at +2, 2 at +1, and 1 at 0. And that covers the 6 that you have.
So, Joe, can I ask
Yeah.
a stupid question?
No.
May I ask a question that may
Yes.
or may not be stupid? And this may not be helpful,
Go ahead.
but I tried to map these onto D&D
Okay.
abilities, and I couldn't do it. Because, for example, force would seem to be strength. Haste would seem to be dexterity. Intellect would seem to be intelligence, but guile...
Wisdom, maybe?
Wisdom.
Guile is wisdom, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So let me steer everyone towards page
Or
100.
I would
Maybe
say
even
focus.
charisma?
I could say
Actually,
focus
Mickey's
is
on that
better.
page. Mickey, read the short description
But
to
you're right,
us
yeah,
for
it's
each
kinda hard.
one.
On
And
page 100?
Yeah, on page 100, it actually tells you your 6 approaches define how you can accomplish an action, and that's what they're used for.
So flair, an action that draws attention to you, replete with style and panache.
Right.
So, for example, delivering an inspiring speech, embarrassing your opponent in a duel. Sacre bleu,
So I thought of this as charisma.
Essentially,
Correct.
yes, but it is even more, to me, it's more than that. It's drawing attention. It's not just being charismatic.
It's like the performance aspect of a
Yeah.
bard.
Yeah.
So, like Chris Angel Mind Freak, like that.
Yes.
That whole grandiose, maybe.
So I thought of this as
Style and
charisma, but I also
panache.
had in guile. I had guile as you said wisdom, but I thought charisma slash.
So it could be
dexterity.
charisma, yeah.
Mickey, skip
Could be
right to
charisma.
Guile and read that one out.
So with guile, an effort focusing on misdirection, stealth, or deceit.
Right.
Examples:
Right.
Like a
talking
magician.
your way through getting arrested, talking your way out of getting arrested, picking a pocket, feigning a sword fight.
Right.
So my point is here is there's
Any
not a
kind of-
one-to-one map.
No.
Because
No, there isn't a map. It's more of the reason I use that analogy wasn't necessarily a one-to-one map, but these are your stats,
right.
right?
But it's interesting because a lot of times in these games we call things different things, but they're just the same thing.
Yeah,
And in this case, they're a little different.
agreed. Yep.
All right, that's all I want
So
to
let's
say.
read a couple others, Mickey.
Focus, time-consuming action in which close attention is paid to detail so the task is properly executed on the first attempt. Examples include lining up for a long-range sniper rifle shot, attentively standing watch, or disarming a bank's alarm system.
Now, who was the long-range sniper in the Adara? Your character.
That was Mickey.
That was
I can't remember her name. That's what.
hard-hearted Hannah,
Hard-hearted Hannah. Yes.
the vamp. Where was I? Force, a display of brute strength rather than subtlety. Haste, a dexterous movement.
Whoa. Don't stop. Read the examples, please, because I love the first one.
Examples are wrestling a troll.
Wrestling a troll.
Yeah.
You can stop there. I'm good.
He's good.
Although staring down a werewolf is
Or-
also a good example.
Yeah.
Or casting a powerful magic
But
spell.
wrestling a troll, who doesn't want to do that?
So
That's just
fireballing,
force.
like fireballing the shack.
Yeah. I mean, it's a powerful magic spell. Yeah. Although there was really no force. Well, I guess yes, there was force. There was no focus, is what I was thinking.
There was no focus,
Yeah,
but there was definitely force.
force. Yes.
Then we had, what was I? Haste, a dexterous movement with alacrity, such as dodging a shot, landing the first punch, or disarming a bomb as it ticks. 3, 2, 1.
You know, haste could have also been used as disarming or fireballing the shack as well, because that was just a split second.
It also would have
decision.
worked really well during a spy game with the gas coming in.
Yes. Yep. That was done with alacrity and fumbling, I believe.
Then we have intellect, quick thinking, the solving of complex problems or accounting for numerous variables at once. For example, code breaking, outwitting a fey courtier, or counting cards in a poker game.
And I like the way they distinguish between things like intellect and focus, which initially to me sound the same, but intellect might be something like coming up with a magic spell, but focus might be actually concentrating on that spell to pull it off. So the difference between a creation and an application. And then if the spell happens to be fireball, then you need force to make that happen too.
Yeah. Right. So we get to rank these essentially.
Yes. What do you think your character is best at? Flair, focus, force, guile, haste, or intelligence?
Well, and so for this game, would we do this kind of as a party to make sure that we have all things covered?
In this case, I would like to think of it that way. Yes.
So
but
I have actually...
Remember, too, hold just a moment, JJ. These are, just as it says, this is an approach at how you accomplish an action. So just being good at focus might not be the same for the druidic character as it is for the Catholic priest vampire. That focus may be a very different focus for different reasons. So it just because two people have focus as the top thing doesn't necessarily mean that they're both contributing in the same way. So think of it from that perspective. But from a party perspective, yes.
Again, going up meta, from a game perspective, for you as the game master, if we get to a situation and something has to be done, and Chris and I both have, I'm just going to make up a number, +2 in focus.
Yep.
Totally different characters, totally different reasons. What does that mean?
Game mechanics, it's identical, but how we play it. So let's use that, focus. Now let's say it's going to be a contest. You're going to roll something against something I have. I have an NPC who is deliberately trying to misdirect you. So your focus would be compared against the NPC's guile.
Okay.
That's what we would do. And then we would compare the end result. And if the positive shifts in your favor, you win. And if it shifts in my favor, I win. Or if it's a tie, we both win/lose. But how that carries out, for example, if I've got the NPC that is trying to fool you into thinking they're starting a forest fire, well, you're more likely to use your focus on that than the Catholic priest would. Yeah. Right? It's going to be situational.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why I say just both having the same focus doesn't mean both characters have the same ability. You have the same number, but you treat it differently.
So in the next 10 minutes, when we're assigning our stats, should we just be thinking, this is how I want to play my character?
Yes.
I'm going to assign them? Or should we be thinking, as a party, we need to cover certain stats?
No, it might be as your player. Like, for example, I'm the Knights of the Cross, so I'm an ass beater, right? I got the sword. I probably want to put a little bit more into force.
And chances are he doesn't have flair. Based on the way he's described his character so far, there's probably no flair.
Even though he might be a priest, which might be good for a priest, but he's not that kind of priest, you know.
So I actually started, and I already done mine. I actually chose the Guardian. The Guardian build out.
Oh, you're using an example. That's a good point. For those who wanted to see it, one of the pages has an example. 94 has different approaches, builds to your character. So you pick what you want, and then they have examples of Brute, All-Star, Trickster, Guardian, Thief, and Swashbuckler. Yeah. So to that point, JJ, go ahead.
So I chose Guardian because I pictured my guy as no-nonsense, really, protector of, the masses. So... And the 0 in flair works for that, and the focus actually works for a lot of my wizard stuff too. So it seemed like it kind of fit exactly the trajectory I wanted to go. So I have a 3 in focus, 2 in force and intellect, 1 in guile and haste, and 0 in flair.
Cool. So just on a note for that page 94, they give some examples, that little Post-it appearing thing on there. And it mentions Carpenter is a guardian. Well, Carpenter is Michael Carpenter, who was a Knight of the Cross in the book. So to give you that same idea, where I was thinking flair is irrelevant. In the books, that guy didn't give a damn about flair. He just went in, like you said, he was an ass beater, essentially. A very committed ass beater.
Which is, I think, is why he has the focus higher than the force,
You don't stray from your mission in that case. Right. And again, think of the word that it actually is. It's an approach. Because what you're going to see is as we get into the game, you are going to be doing things that are either, conflict, investigation. Now I can't remember what the other one they say is. But you're going to have a situation in front of you, and you decide how you're approaching it, and then you use that approach to get it done.
What page were the descriptions of these things on?
100.
Yes. And that is 1 or 2 sentences. Actually, I think all of them are 1 sentence and then examples afterwards.
That's fine.
Yep. And remember, you are going to be, as a starting character, you're going to be in that ladder, which I'll spend a moment talking about that because it was in the Dresden Files RPG, but it's in all Fate systems. The ladder itself is how good you are at something or how good your result was at the thing you tried. And what that means is we have a 10-step ladder, or is it 11? It's 11 steps. It goes from -2 to 8. And as starting characters, you have things at level 0, +1, +2, or +3, which means 0 is mediocre. It means anybody that can do something does it at this level. As you get better,
breathe, you can do this.
Essentially, think of things like breathing, reading, writing, stuff like that. They're mediocre. Everybody can do that. And then +1, it says average, but what that means more so is average at a specific thing. So you're better at driving than a mediocre driver. You maybe only pause at stop signs or something like that, right? And then it goes up to +2 fair. Now this is pretty good because that means you're pretty much advanced on whatever that thing is. If we talk about writing, then you probably can you've practiced calligraphy or something like that. You're very practiced at the thing. And then +3 at good is almost at the limit of what a regular mortal can do. So you're talking about if it's a computer work, this is the level 4 technician. He's a subject matter expert of everything he does within IT, that type of thing. And then it goes up from there to levels that the characters don't have yet. +4 is great, +5 is superb, +6 is fantastic, and 7 is epic, 8 is legendary, and 8 is the very top. So you're talking godlike at that point.
So here, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
My character as the outdoorsman,
Yeah.
I don't envision him as a brute strength fighter, but I envision him as a highly effective, marksman.
Okay.
So if he had a bow or a crossbow or a rifle, I would imagine he's a stud. If he was in a hand-to-hand fist fight, I would imagine him being average. So where does that come in? Is his force high because he's good?
Maybe his focus is high.
I would think
say
focus.
And go back to the initial word, approach. What is the approach? If you want to deal excessive damage with the arrow once you've shot it, then that's going to be force. But if you want, who cares how much damage, but you want to hit him in the eye when you shoot it, that's going to be focus.
Right. He's more like a sniper, stealthy ranger. So probably
so
more
I would say
focus
focus, right?
Than force, right?
So that means, you could probably pick up a rock from the ground, take aim, and hit something at 100 yards.
So my guy, I need to be snipery, rangery in the woods, but also charismatic when required, even though he doesn't like it in the 1%er social functions. So
maybe focus.
He's probably going to be kind of flair and focus.
Now, do you want flair or do you want intellect? Because with intellect, it's more like you're convincing people without the flair. They give an example of outwitting a Fey courtier, which is a big deal. Outwitting any of the Fae is a big deal.
Well, outwitting the Fae in this context would mean forcing it to say, because the Fae can't lie. The Fae are not.
But knowing that, the intelligence, in this case, intellect, to know the situation and play it without bringing attention to yourself. Flair is going to bring attention to yourself when you do it.
Right. So my guy, the way I envision him is not being showy.
Yeah.
So he would probably be more.
None of us are showy. None of us have. Everyone has a 0 in flair. Got it.
I think that Buffy should have a little.
I
bit
think
of flair.
Buffy's got some flair.
No, her original
Mickey
thing was 0
that.
flair.
Yeah.
It's still at 0 flair.
But maybe you should up
so
your flair.
none of us have flair.
Up your flair.
I'll up my flair.
Just think about it. Think about upping your flair.
See, the thing is, the person with the most flair is probably going to be the party leader.
It's possible because, it yes and no, because the intent of flair, the first line or the first part of the sentence is draws attention to you.
Well, and that's a good question.
The party leader doesn't necessarily draw attention to
but
themselves.
That's a perfectly fine question. If we end up as a party going out,
you will end up as a party
to deal with stuff.
Otherwise, we're doing it wrong.
Who's gonna? Who do we want to be the?
It's all
first?
done by committee.
It can be.
Yeah,
We take it in turns to act as a committee.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be like
There.
the leader
I have
always
my
calling the
flare to one.
shots. You know.
I mean, I'm totally fine with that. I don't. But if someone wants to be the
Realistically,
spokesman-
as we get into every situation, somebody's going to step up. We
Or-
know
yeah,
that.
right.
That's just the
It's
way
gonna
it's
be-
going to work. But when it comes to that,
Right?
it
I'm gonna
really
be sober though.
every one of these is going to depend on the situation. So say you want
Well,
to get
trying to
in
think about
there.
my guy. If I'm a Cleveland in the upstate and I've got $100 million in my bank account, I don't want to have flair, but like as a practical matter, I probably kind of do. Like Bruce Wayne is not a showman,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but he's
not-
still
Well,
when he walks in a room, everyone's like he's
Everyone
Bruce
still
Wayne.
recognizes
But
him.
he
Exactly.
does
But that's
that.
not flair.
He
That's
does
not
it on
flair.
purpose, though. He brings attention to himself to draw attention away from Batman. That's on purpose. I consider that flair. He
You
brings
should have-
attention
I think
to
you
the
should have
millionaire
flair.
playboy.
I think you should step
Yeah.
up your priest and make him flary.
Well, he can do, because I don't want to.
But I see-
you don't want to be that guy.
Go back to Bruce Wayne Batman. That's a combination to me of flair and intellect. He knows when to show the flair to show that Bruce Wayne's a millionaire playboy who couldn't possibly be the
Well,
Dark
JJ
Knight.
clearly does not want to be the party leader with his character, which is fine.
Now
Maybe
let
you
me
should be the.
I'm
Maybe you should have,
fine.
I think you should. I think Buffy should have a little more flair.
I'm
So-
fine with being leader. I just don't
let
want to
me
be
let me
flair.
go back to the point I was saying again. Approach. It's called
Just
approach. It is approach. So say the
more,
situation
chill.
requires for someone to arm wrestle someone else. Well, someone in the party is going to convince the guys that our strongest person should arm wrestle them, and then the strongest person is going to use their approach of force to do the arm wrestle.
All right, so I think for this campaign, because JJ and Mickie love the Dresden Files and they
Yeah.
want to play Dresden Files and they have awesome characters.
Oh, snap.
And I am too aggressive as a personality generally, and I talk too much. That Mickie should have pluses on flair, and she should be the de facto party leader.
Does Buffy, what's her name, want to
Maura.
draw
Maura
attention to
Desane.
herself?
Okay.
Because Flair specifically says draw attention to you.
the
You
way
don't
I,
have
With
to. We got
style
on zeros
and
on
finesse.
flair.
Depends
but,
how you
like,
draw attention.
the way
to
I
yourself,
did it
though.
was force is the highest, then focus and intellect, then flair, haste with guile the lowest. So I could see
If we had to go in and deal with a banker, if we had to go in, I'm just making something up. We have to go in and deal with some banker who's supporting the real estate developers, and we want to intimidate them. Like, who's going to take the lead in that interaction with this party?
Well, intimidation is different than.
All right, so let me throw this out there. Depending on what you're doing, are you going to try and deceive them in any way? In which case, it's guile.
Right.
Flair has nothing to do with
or
it.
force, you're trying to like really,
Yeah.
physically.
It's the
Arm-
approach. What
arm
approach
So
do
do we
you want
just
to
want
the
to go pure
situation?
Strong
committee,
armor.
just make your character the way you want to make it, and it'll all work out? Or do
yes.
When I thought Flair, with
such a
Mickey's
pussy.
character for Maura, when I was thinking Flair, the idea for me was the whole. When I've seen a few episodes of Buffy, I've watched I think most of the first season. She doesn't kill
the
any.
worst season. It's the word, literally the worst season.
Hold, please. She doesn't kill anything unless she can cartwheel into it. Right? That's Flair.
That's flair.
Right?
Yeah.
Literally, that's
Savvy.
Flair.
It's very showy.
Yeah. It's look at me, I'm going to kick your ass. That's Flair. And that's why I was thinking of it from that perspective.
All right, so we're just gonna each make our characters, and what happens, happens.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little
yes,
I would
bit.
just like to
I'll
note
up
for
the
the
flair.
record that I offered everyone the chance to talk way more than me
Yeah.
and to be the party leader.
In doing-
Like I said, I'm fine with being the leader, but I don't. Flair's not his thing because I don't want to draw attention to myself.
no, he's the one that's
So
going to
you
have
might
the
lead by a
quiet
force or
conversation.
by something else.
Exactly.
No,
Guile
just-
or
He's going to have
Or
the
just
quiet
being stern and
conversation
curt
with the
about
bad
things.
guy.
Just like let's get it done.
No, if you're going
But
to
I'm
be
not like
get it.
I'm not having these rousing speeches of
I get it. I get
not
it.
pulling a Braveheart moment out.
I get it.
so Chris, if you want to be stern, that's fine. But if you want to be curt, then you're going to have to talk too much.
Can't be that.
I mean, I do talk a lot.
Short to the point.
Interesting that you chose the name that doesn't mean what you are.
Me?
Yeah,
He chose it.
you chose it. You could have been what, Jamie?
I am Jamie.
Yeah, but you chose Kurt, and
real
you're
life?
not Kurt.
That's right.
confusing
I was waiting for it to sink in, and it
Correct.
did.
Correct.
We're good.
All right, so let's
Gears
do our
spinning.
stats.
Yeah,
We got 30
let's
minutes
talk
left.
a little about that. Who has JJ mentioned his already.
just
So
like to-
JJ, tell us what that means when your character has those stats. How is his approach to normal situations? So let's think about it from when there's a volatile situation, when there's a calm.
So there's a volatile
whatever,
situation.
right?
The first thing he would do is turn on his third eye to determine intent.
Okay.
That's going to be something that's going to be happening quite often. And the reason I make sure that that seems important is in the books, that is something that Dresden dreads doing. He does not like the third eye. He recognizes its usefulness, but does not like to utilize it. Whereas I'm going to play my character as almost an addict of that, of knowing more than what can usually be determined from the naked eye.
Okay.
So with that in mind, and with the soul gaze, and I was able to determine that both those things are focus related, I wanted to make sure I was good at both of those things.
Okay.
So that is why I chose focus. But it also works out that I wanted to be no nonsense. So the zero and flare kind of works out. And then as a spellcaster, I'm going to need force and intellect.
Okay.
And Guile and haste are the only ones left. So that's why I took that approach.
Okay.
And the Guardian
build
out, or whatever you call it, it just worked out well.
What page was the build out on?
94.
There you go. Yeah, the description of the approaches is 100, and 94 has the beginning there.
So you're comfortable with your build out. Mickie, you're comfortable with your build out?
Yes.
Then
so
what does it mean for Mora?
with Mora, I selected Force as her highest at +3, then Focus and Intellect at +2, with Haste, Flare +1, and Guile at 0. The way I picture her is, if something goes down, something goes bump in the night, she's going to go out guns blazing first, because she knows that these things don't play around, right? So you strike first, you strike hard, and then the focused and intellect come into play, because she does do a lot of rituals, because sometimes you do need to do that, invoke either magical beings, etc. So she needs a bit of that. Flare and haste, in that sometimes you do need to take the lead,
move
take charge,
with alacrity as well.
Move with alacrity.
And then you dropped Guile because she's no nonsense.
No nonsense.
So you did not track a particular build from the page 94. You just did what made sense.
Yeah.
No.
All right. Chris, why don't you go? Because I have no freaking idea what I'm doing.
Okay, I put Force as the highest one because I want to. He wants to be that hand of God. That fist of God. He wants to wrestle a troll.
So you and Buffy are gonna have to argue about who gets to kill the thing first.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
And then my next two are Focus
Kill
and
it
Haste.
twice.
And Haste because I want that speed. I want to get that shot off first. I want to get in there. Focus. I want to stay on mission. I'm trying to get to. I want to see if I could find a fix myself so I'm not like this cursed soul anymore. So I need to stay on mission. And then I have a 1 in Intellect and Guile. Intellect is just to get, I don't want to be the dumb guy. He's supposed to be a community leader, supposedly, And Guile, I still have to hide what I really am to people. So I still have to have a little bit of that deceit going on. And especially when I'm kind of feeding off my parishioners, I'm using them.
Yeah,
so
you've got to be able to talk your way out of that.
Yeah, so I'm using
someone
them to kind of feed that hunger, that curse I have, but not to go all the way and become what I don't want to become. And then Flare because I don't want to really draw attention to myself at all.
So your +0 is Flare?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to ask
What are you thinking, Kurt?
Well, I'm going to ask you all to help me build my stats because I have no idea.
So let me start because I don't have an input. I don't have a character. So let me throw a little bit out there.
What's your mantle? I mean,
what you've and that's what I'm going to go at. What you've described so far, I'm thinking overall that you're going to have. I wanted to say the word focus, but focus is an approach. You're going to concentrate on probably focus and intellect because that sounds like things that make sense to your character. You're going to want to the whole lining up a shot, the archery, the marksmanship, whatever you like. That's focus. And then intellect is solving of complex problems, accounting for numerous variables at once, quick thinking. And based on the way you've described your character, it sounds like as the rich guy who just wants to spend time in nature, you've probably had to talk your way into and out of that more than once, but not necessarily drawing attention to yourself. So it's not Flare. And you're not necessarily misdirecting or deceiving, so it's not Guile. So I'm thinking that's probably more intellect. So between those two, I would say one of them should be your +3, based on what I've heard so far.
And when you go to the mantle of Earl King's Huntmaster, Crazy Ninja Powers says that you mark a box and gain a +2 to Guile.
Okay.
So you're able to, if you had a 3 in Guile, you go to a +5.
And that
which
could
is
be based off of the
insane.
stealth piece as well. As a hunter,
Exactly, as
that
a
could be
hunter,
the
as a
stealth
stalker.
piece.
Because Guile
you're
is
hiding
also
your-
you
Right.
tracking something.
Right. So I was thinking focus and guile would be my top
Okay.
two, with intellect being the next. But
Well, you still need a top 1. Only one gets a +3. So you need a top 1. Then you have a, what is it?
So
2 at +2, 2 at
forgetting about
+1.
min-maxing my character. If I were
Yeah.
just doing it, I would think +3 to focus, +2 to guile, and then I get another +2. Is
Yep.
that right?
Maybe intellect.
+2 to intellect,
You get 2 +1s and a 0.
and then a +1 to
What do you think?
force and flare, and a 0 to haste. But I don't know.
That sounds fine.
I have a hard time thinking of a nature type, druid type character that doesn't have haste.
Yeah,
I shouldn't say doesn't have haste. Isn't quick,
right.
dexterous. I mean, you're going to get bit by a rattlesnake,
Right.
if you can't get out of the way. But that's me. I'm thinking of it that way. Now I'm
haste-
thinking of
in fact,
maybe too
haste
literally.
would probably be more important than intellect to my character.
But here's the deal. I may be thinking of it too literally. It could be your intellect that keeps you away from them so you don't have to jump out of the way.
Well,
you're smart enough to know not to go where
That's the
rattlesnakes
thing.
are.
He hunts with
Yeah.
intellect, not force.
Right. I guess the only question based on what I
Maybe
just
your
wrote
force
down
would be
is-
0.
Make your force a 0.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say make my force 0. Exactly. And then switch haste to +1.
That sounds reasonable.
And so then I've got +3 focus, +2 guile, which works socially and in the woods, +1 flare, +1 haste, +2 intellect, +0 force.
Okay.
I'm not a strong, which is fine because you guys are force.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have
I have a
Cletus
+2.
has he has a plus as well.
on
Not the 3,
what?
but he
I
has
have
a
a
+2
On what?
Force.
Force.
On force. Wow.
So
who has the highest flare?
You.
you do.
+1? I have a.
Everyone else chose 0 for
I
flare.
have
So
a
my
+1.
reluctant.
Oh, no, she has a
I'm
1.
sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah,
My
that's
reluctant.
right.
Yeah.
What's
okay,
your 0
all right.
in?
Guile.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
She's a street
right.
shooter. She's a monster
Keep it
hunter that
real.
doesn't bother hiding.
Yeah. You
That's why you hit him. You hit him first. You hit him hard, and you don't have to bother hiding.
Exactly.
All right.
That's a good point.
I like it.
They can't kill you if they're dead.
You can't kill you.
All right. I'm just looking a little in the book here, and we're going to talk a little
That's my
bit about
next
how these
aspect.
things work.
That's your next aspect. They can't kill you if you're dead. If they're-
if they're dead.
I'm going to write the rest of mine down.
So aspects that was just brought up. Let's talk about that a little. For those who have the PDF or the pages in front of you, page 106 starts talking about the aspects, which are the fulcrum of fate. So aspects, they are things that define a certain place, character, situation that can be used to your advantage or disadvantage. And for our characters, we talked about some of them already. If you look on page 106, Chris, are you on that page?
Yep.
Can you read some of those examples? The 5 stars at the top.
A room is given the Blazing Inferno aspect after Harry Dresden uses his Fuego spell imprudently. Thomas Wraith inflicts the Intense Lust aspect on a target before feeding on them. Sounds like something Kurt would pull off. A comfortable family home is protected by the Strong Threshold aspect. The Archive is mandated to have the Neutrality aspect. Chicago has the aspect of the Windy City.
So when you hear those, they go along with it. Like the first example where Harry Dresden's just shooting fire. Well, the room is now in a blazing inferno. And what that means is that it has an aspect now that people can use. So you can say, because the room's a blazing inferno, there's plenty of smoke and I'm obscured. And you use that to your advantage. At the same time, I can say, because the room's a blazing inferno, it's too hot for you to perform any actions now, and you got to find a way to either deal with that or get out.
Right.
So that's what an aspect means. Same thing on your character. So when you start thinking about that, as we get to different scenarios, different situations, different scenes, different places, there will be aspects on them as we start, and then you can also invoke aspects or even cause them. Cast your own fireball, and now the place can be a blazing inferno. Or we can put an aspect like, too hot to stay or too hot to handle, something like that.
So at the bottom of 106, Joe, it says character aspects rarely change, save as a result of significant life events or milestones in character development. I like the examples because I think these are helpful to think about aspects. On the run from the Order of the Blackened Daenerys,
Would be me.
or pedantic trivia junkie, or this might be for JJ, just serve and protect.
I thought you meant the trivia junkie.
Or not to be trusted.
Yeah.
You skip Polka will never
Polka
die.
will never die.
Yeah, I don't know where that
It needs
that one,
to.
Where that one fit. But like if you have a character that you want to play as shifty and shady, like one of your aspects should be not to be trusted, because you can use that as you can invoke that for yourself, and you as a GM can invoke that against.
Well,
us.
yeah, like I put down protect the flock. It doesn't have to be my permissioners. Could be anybody I'm connected to that I want to protect them because that's my thing. But he could screw you.
He would screw you because
I'm going to throw myself in the harm's way all the
Where
time.
I would counter your example a little bit is if I have shifty and shady already there, then I'm going to use that to say, because you're shifty and shady, this guy doesn't trust you. I don't need a not to be trusted. Right? That's part of being shifty and shady.
Exactly.
So we don't need to get that specific unless it means something.
Yeah.
In this case, if you already have this this aspect of I'm shifty and shady, then clearly you're going to the bad part of that for me means already you can't be trusted. Maybe I can buy you off onto my side. There are things like that just flow with it that you may not need to be as specific.
And this is not me. This is me not understanding fate. But like, let's say Mickie has not to be trusted or shifty and shady as an aspect, and she gets into a cocktail party and she's talking with someone, and it's a key moment. Mm-hmm. Don't you? And again, I may be totally wrong on this, but as a GM, say, I'm going to offer you a fate point as a compel where he doesn't believe you because you're shifty and shady.
Yep.
And she can take that as a complication and get the fate point. Or she can say, no. I want to be trusted in this case. You keep the fate point.
Yeah. That's one
No,
way to look at it.
then she has to give a fate
Or
point.
she has to pay to make it
Right.
go away, yes.
So in that case, like not to be trusted is a good aspect because you can play it.
But the same as shifty and shady. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I wouldn't get as granular as saying not to be trusted.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
all. I leave it generic so that it can be used as more good options or more bad
Like I'm trying to
options.
think now. So my third aspect was I can dress up well, but I don't like to.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm just thinking to myself, is that a good aspect? Can I play that both ways?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can, because there may be a function where,
Well, I'm thinking, too, that say I want to call that out as a bad thing, and you're at a function,
Right.
well, you happen to wear boat shoes where you should have worn wingtips. And I can call that out against you, and you wouldn't fit in, you'd start to draw attention, and that might be a bad thing.
Or you're
In which
uncomfortable,
case, you have to
know.
lose a fate point for that not to happen.
right. And I'd say, no, I would never wear boat shoes ever. I'd wear patent leather, but I'm
have to-
super uncomfortable, and they notice that, and
Yeah.
therefore something happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when you were saying it, I found that as something we could twist either way.
Okay.
Because that also means that when you need to, you'll be able to fit the situation for the
Right.
upscale.
But I might have to pay a fate point to make it work.
By default, it'll just work. But it's when you want to actually change a bit of the story or add to a die roll or something, that's when you need the fate point.
But like, I'm just talking through how this works. So my character is at a high-end cocktail party or charity function. And
Getting there and getting dressed right, you can do.
I can do
because
that, no
that's an
problem. But
aspect.
like, so let's say I go and I talk to one of the real estate developers, who is going to be very classy and doesn't even have to think about this. If I want to get something from that person, maybe you say,
I'm sorry.
Well,
You
it
have
would
to
start.
pay
It
me
would
a
start
fate
as an
point.
approach. You want to go in and convince him of something.
right.
So how do you approach that?
So
what
maybe I
what
roll
approach are
against
you
you.
going to use?
Yeah, you need to gain
and then
his
I see
confidence.
what I'm going to use as a counter to that, because every roll is opposed by something. Even if it's a DC, there's a target to hit. Most conflicts and interactions like that will be an opposed roll, so that will be what you're targeting. A normal thing like an investigation, it might be a level of good, so you've got to get a +2 to get that, whatever it may be. And I may have just said that wrong. Good is +3. So you may have a static number, or you may have a dynamic number, depending on an opposed roll. But that's where you would start that. However, when you bring in the aspect is when you say, because I dress particularly well for this party based on this aspect, I should be able to use a fate point to then get a +2.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you don't just say, well, I'm going to use a fate point, blah, blah, blah. You're going to use a point to get an advantage of some type, what have you.
Or maybe you could say, it appears that you did not press your tuxedo.
Yeah, and
so
that's if
she's
I
not
want to
gonna
use it
introduce
against
you
you.
to her husband, unless you spend a fate point.
And that you might say, well, I'm going to walk up to the guy who's in charge here. And at that point, I say, oh, cool, I'm going to try and catch Kurt's character out on this. As you're walking up, you realize that your suit coat isn't pressed properly. And if you keep going a little further, he's going to notice that, and here's a fate point if you want to let that happen. And you say, no, I don't want to let that happen. You have to give me a fate point to counter it.
Okay.
In which case, you are indeed properly pressed, and you approach the way you want to.
So
What if I'm not properly pressed, but I come up with an excuse for why I'm not properly pressed?
Then you're giving me a fate point to negate it.
Okay.
Yep.
So some of the good aspects I've seen that I kind of like, and I stay bot is
I
one.
stay what?
I stay bot.
BOUGHD?
I stay bot. So once someone buys me, they have my loyalty.
Okay.
No one else within that shifty and shady thing. You could instead of saying that you're mercurial, you're I stay bot.
There's honor amongst thieves.
Or another one I like is paranoid. I call it being prepared.
Yeah.
Like
Preparanoid.
Yeah, that's good.
if you want it, you can scroll through. Just get ideas.
So we're talking about some of this now. We've gotten our approaches out of the way. We're going to move on to page 95, which is calculating refresh. Your refresh determines your minimum number of fate points received at the start of each game session. Now, for us in the shed, we're going to determine what that means as we actually get started playing. A game session, of course, normally means you're sitting down for a few hours playing. And in that case, it's when you start, you'll get a fate point refresh and get your points back. In our case, because we typically do an hour at a time, we're just going to judge how that works. What I'd like to think is, based on the regular Dresden Files role-playing game, it'll be more like a scene or a situation. Once you get past this thing, then you ought to be able to get some sort of refresh, and we'll determine how that works as we go. But you need to determine what you have to start with. So everyone started with a refresh of 3, which was something that was part of the character creation. And then we're going to find out, I think some point here, if it might be lower because of what we've chosen. What we're going to do next, though, is at the bottom of 95, choosing a stunt. So everyone got core stunts. And then in addition to that, within your mantle,
You get one additional.
you
right?
get to choose one additional stunt. And we're going to go through and choose one of those and talk about why we chose it. Who wants to get started on that? Did anyone already have one they chose, I guess, for that matter?
I do.
All right, JJ.
So, in order to get to Warden with the Silver Sword,
Okay.
I had to buy White Council membership, which is the one I got for free, and then the Warden, and then the Silver Sword.
Okay. So, what was the stunt then? The new one, I'm sorry, the one that you chose.
The White
name of
Council
it.
membership, then to
Okay.
Warden, then to Silver Sword.
Okay.
Which leaves me with one refresh.
Okay.
How many can we take?
To create your character, you had your core stunts, and then you pick one more
Yeah.
out of the optional ones.
Yeah, you get all core stunts
You
and
can
one
get
additional.
more than
Yeah.
that.
But
you
going
lose
by the book
refresh.
right now, we're doing choosing one more. And then, so at the bottom of 95, it says, your character automatically receives all core stunts associated with their mantle. In addition, you may choose one additional. It didn't need it. Yeah, anyway. From what is available to their mantle, or one you've created yourself, per the rules in Chapter 8, which we didn't do, so we're going to stick with what's there for now. We'll pick from the menu, and later on we'll create our own entrees.
Okay.
And that's what we're doing next. So we've got what JJ's was to either Chris or Mickie. Have you decided yet?
Well, I'm unsure because I'm kind of
So which ones sound good?
I'm kind of because I got the dual class thing kind of going here.
What's more interesting, the Knight of the Cross options, or the White Court Vampire?
Well, I probably should get because for the White Court Virgin, your core stunts are just the mortal stunts.
Okay.
So I might just leave those out completely and just go Knight of the Cross core stunts, and then for the additional, just do an additional on the White Court, which would give me more of that vampiric presence, and use one of those, like either physique, toughness, or recovery. So,
okay. So what is more appealing to you at this time?
I think I'm going to go for the one of the 3 vampiric stunts.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is,
for the additional. Anyway.
When we start talking about party balance, one of the things that is very stereotypical in tabletop role-playing games is you got your tank, your magic user, your healer, and one other, typically, like a ranged fighter of some type. And from what I've heard so far in this game, nobody is really a healer. And if you have some kind of self-regeneration, that might be a benefit.
Yeah, that's what I was like.
Yeah. Not that I'm saying it's needed, because to be honest, I don't know yet if it's needed.
Yeah.
The way the fate system works is you're pretty much never going to die. You're just going to be taken out of a situation. But if the self-regeneration helps you, I don't know, get rid of a condition, that could be a big plus.
It does, yeah. Or I could do, vampiric toughness gives you the 2 shifts from a physical attack. So it's almost like you're not taking the damage.
So avoiding it.
Yeah. And the physique will give you like the bonus on, I guess, brute force, strength or something, or speed.
Okay. Mickie, what are you looking at under Monster Hunter?
So additional stunts under Monster Hunter are Nemesis and its brood, the prey game, Off the Grid, and Slayer. So with Nemesis, you choose one specific creature that is your nemesis. Then within its brood, you can mark the survivors, offsprings, or helpers of a marked quarry.
That's interesting, because that almost makes it sound generational, and you're a generational hunter.
So and your little dog too?
Yeah.
Then with the prey game, you've learned a great way to take advantage against the monsters to pretend vulnerability. So that allows you to lure in whatever your... Lure. Whatever. You know that word.
Yes, I do.
Then off the grid, I can easily get out of a sticky situation, no permanent home or identity. So that kind of fits with a hunter. Multiple identities, being able to get in and out of the town.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
And then there's Slayer,
which
once
of course
per
sounds
session.
awesome. Yeah.
Declare to have a level of scale against a supernatural opponent, but must choose only one type of action. So what I was torn between was the prey game and off the grid, because I think they would both fit with how this character is shaping in my mind.
Okay.
The prey game makes sense because as a female hunter, she would need that cunning extra advantage to take down some really powerful
You're
beings.
manipulating expectations.
Yeah. And then off the grid also fits with kind of the backstory I have for her, being able to go in and out throughout the United States, primarily East Coast, and get herself out of sticky situations easily. So
interesting. Okay. Think from the perspective that we will be starting really in one area and mainly tackling specific things. Which is more interesting to get started?
The prey game.
Okay.
I think that's what I'm going to go with.
And one thing we said off the air before we clicked record on this one, Kurt was talking about committing to certain things and not being able to change. And I brought up something that I've said on just about every game we start, and it's true here as well. If you decide within the first few sessions, or really any time during the game, but specifically in the first few sessions, that there's something about your character you don't really like and you think something else would be better, then we find a way to make that happen. So if, for example, on this one, the Slayer would have been the better option, or Nemesis would have been a better option, we'll change that. There's no harm in that whatsoever. We just make the character fit your concept, rather than you forced to play a character that doesn't fit what you wanted to do. So we'll definitely accommodate that way. Kurt, we're down to you now for picking the extra stunt. Although I don't know Chris had actually decided. We talked about a few.
My additional, I'm going to go for the recovery. The vampiric recovery will be the additional.
So I'm a little confused. I'm in Old King's Huntmaster, and I've got my unique conditions and my stunts from there. And then
you have core stunts.
You have core stunts. You
get those. And then
I get those.
Other stunts, for
And so-
now, you're picking one out of there.
Just one? Additional stunt?
We're going by the book on page 95. You automatically receive all core. In addition, you may choose one stunt from what's available to your mantle.
Unless you want to allow me one from each, it's your call.
Yeah.
Though.
Well, we'll talk about more stunts,
Right.
But
So
for
mine's-
now, we'll do by the book and pick the
Yeah.
one.
So under my mantle, additional stunts says, with GM approval, I may select stunts from the general Fey list on page
Yeah.
158. Mark one box of wild power to use any Fey stunt. So
Mm-hmm.
wild power is one of my core stunts.
Your unique conditions.
Or my unique conditions, rather. Yeah, that's right. And so then I guess if I jump... So I just get to pick one Fey stunt? Is that correct?
If you're choosing the first thing, but then there are other stunts after that first one.
So essentially, what it's saying is, these are the stunts that the ones underneath. So Glamour, Hunter's Guide, Wild Hunt, Second Stringer, Cloak of Shadows, Ghostbane. Those fit the theme of being the Earl King's Hunt Master.
Right.
But you're not limited to those. You can also choose from the Fey list.
Oh, okay.
Now, it may not make sense for you to pick from the Fey list because you're choosing to be human.
Right. So, okay, I get it. So I can pick from the additional stunts listed here, or I can go to the Fey list.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
But to start, you pick one out of that full list of options.
Okay, so again, I would defer to the group here. My inclination is that I could have a ton of fun with Glamour. If it's,
Does that fit your character that you wanted to have no flair for, though?
Well, that's a good point.
Because glamour is one thing, but when you say ton of fun with glamour, that
Well, glamour's more like
Sounds like-
disguise, right?
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's actually probably
But you've got some of
But
that.
like, I don't
covered.
know, does Hunter's Guide, is that going to be very applicable to our campaign? You advise those who pursue outsiders should any pass beyond the outer gates. I don't even know what that means.
I would say no. I don't anticipate outsiders anytime soon.
All right.
Outsiders means,
End of world.
End of the world.
Right.
yeah, it is like we have a universe and we know what's in it, including the Never Never and crap like that. And then there's outside of that.
Right.
And don't mess with that ever,
Right.
ever.
Right. So not helpful.
Yes.
So then I have Wild Hunt Second Stringer. Any failed attempt to summon the Wild Hunt claims my immediate attention. Including- I mean, doesn't seem...
It's a specific Dresden verse thing,
Right.
which isn't going to approach our campaign for several sessions.
Right, so then I get Cloak of Shadows, which I would need to look up on page 159. Which
So you can see perfectly in the dark and are immune to any potential effect of normal or magical darkness. Additionally, once per session, you may declare that you automatically succeed at hiding from any non-magical attempt to see you, provided you have a nearby shadow to hide within.
You have a Cloak of Shadows with you.
That could be
Okay.
pretty useful.
that could be useful. And there's it looks like an upgrade Ghostbane, which
Yep,
requires Cloak of
Ghostbane,
Shadows.
which requires Ghost of Shadows. You ignore the incorporeality of insubstantial creatures and affect them as if they were physical. So you are a ghost killer.
Right.
You're a Ghost Rider.
And then my last one would be Slayer of ... I have one of 3 benefits against a
Ghost Rider.
specific type of creature. Basically, I get to pick a type of creature and having a bonus to attack, defend, and create advantage against them. So I could say, like, I'm a Slayer of vampires, I'm a Slayer of ghosts, I'm a Slayer of
Humanoids.
werewolves.
Cloak of Shadows fits your character as described so far.
It does.
The
Okay.
ability to conceal yourself where needed. Because
Glamour,
say you screw
Right.
up at the dinner party,
Right.
as long as there's a shadow in the corner,
I'm out.
you disappear.
Right. Or if I'm hunting something and it
Yeah.
goes bad, I'm out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I agree. Cloak of Shadows.
just for completion, Glamour is you cast minor veils and seemings. With a moment of concentration, you may draw a veil over something roughly person-sized, hiding it from sight and other means of detection. Or you may cause a person or object to appear differently than it normally does. An observer may attempt to discern the illusion, but to do so, they must have some legitimate suspicion that what they are seeing is a glamour. You use intellect to resist any disbelief attempt.
You remember your one shot where you did the spiders and bugs
Right,
and
right, right.
stuff? That was essentially glamour.
I'm going to go with Cloak of Shadows to start.
Yeah. I think it fits your character as described so far because you're not particularly deceitful, which is what I think of glamour as. You're
Right.
specifically hiding the identity of a thing,
Right.
whereas with the Cloak of Shadows, you're hiding yourself. You're
They
trying
all
to
sound fun,
disappear.
but right.
Cool.
And maybe as I become more enmeshed with the Fae through the Earl King or whatever his name is, I'll get into
Yeah, you
the
probably
other
shouldn't
stuff.
say that to him.
As I get more immersed with him.
Yeah.
Enmeshed.
Yeah, don't say whatever you are or your name is.
Oh, okay.
That's your liege.
That's your liege.
All right, so let's now take a look at. We're going to page 96 now. This is one where I've read it a couple of times, so somebody else help me out with this. I think I understand it, but let's try and get it right on our character sheets while we're finishing up this episode. So it's recording stress and conditions. Each character has six stress boxes, and you can find that in the lower left of your sheet. And that's to mark specific amount of physical and mental duress you can endure. Now, if you remember when we played the regular RPG, there was physical, mental, and something else. There were 3 stress tracks. Yeah. There's 1 now, another piece of the accelerated simplified system. Then you also receive a number of conditions representing injuries, mental trauma, and persistent effects from your mantle or other sources. So here's where this is the part that was kind of confusing me. It says you have those. Now, for example, I know, Kurt, your mantle had specific conditions in it. But where do you put that on your character sheet? I was kind of confused in that.
Under conditions?
So underneath the indebted part,
yeah.
he would write down wild power, and then he has those 5 boxes.
But that's not indebted. You're talking about the blank spot.
The blank spots.
All right, yeah. So that kind of makes sense then.
Gotcha.
All right. So anybody that has those, based on your mantle, if you have conditions, you want to write those in there. And the reason that imperil, doomed, and indebted are there is, according to the book at least, they are ascribed by default to each character, in addition to all unique conditions associated with the mantle. And then on your character sheet, besides each condition, place a box or boxes per the description beside each condition, which you can mark off when the condition is in effect. And going back to Kurt's one, I remember, because this is one I actually looked at the page. One of your conditions, I think, was 1 box, one was 5 boxes, and one was something else. So make sure you have the right amount of boxes marked off for that. And then, all right, so we're doing that part now. If we can, let's see if we can figure that out and make sure the character sheets reflect it. Who has conditions that have boxes?
So I have exhausted and burned out as conditions I can mark.
Okay. Is that yours, Mickie, in pursuit?
I don't know.
So in pursuit is a unique condition under Monster Hunter, and it says 1 box.
Oh, okay. So it's either in pursuit and wounded.
Yeah, but wounded doesn't has 4?
4.
Is that what it means?
Yep. So she has only 4 boxes out of those.
Okay. So for unique conditions, you would write on your sheet on one of them, in pursuit, and cross off 4 of the boxes, I guess, because you only have 1. You just have to mark it off by 1 box. It's an indication of that it is in effect.
Okay,
so it's an on-off switch.
I have wild power.
Yeah.
Which is 5 boxes.
Mm-hmm.
I mark one of the conditions 5 boxes to access my mantle's powers, as detailed in my stunts, blah, blah, blah. So, for example, if I use faster, stronger, tougher, it says mark a box of wild power to add +1. If I use crazy ninja powers, it says mark a box of wild power to gain +2. Yep. My question is, I have something called disfavored. It says you must mark this condition when you have violated an order of the Earl King or otherwise fallen out of his favor. Until your atonement, you're prohibited from accessing the mantle stunts and conditions. So I think that is, I put disfavored, and I just have 1 box of that.
So
yeah, it's either on-off switch.
It's either you're disfavored or you're not.
Yeah.
Right, so it's not on. Yeah.
So it's just this.
Yep.
All right, got it.
All right.
To atone, I must rectify the violation somehow in the manner that the GM prescribes.
Yes.
I've been a bad man, GM.
And let's tell you how you can be.
So I have something
You
similar
did that
called Crisis
different,
of Faith for my guy.
because you want 1 unmarked box.
Okay, since I'm doing
or
both,
wounded.
do I get all the conditions and all the additional stunts, or should I just do?
Because look, I only have 1 box for exhausted.
Let's put it
Okay.
this way.
And 1
Right
box
now
for third
on
eye
your
and 1
sheet,
box
you
for
have
third eye.
spots
There
for
you go.
3
And then
conditions
put-
to write in.
Right,
So
so
if you
if-
have more than 3, skip 1.
Right. Okay. So
Just because we don't want to write extra stuff for now.
Right.
And we can review that.
yeah,
as well.
for the White Cord Vampire, because there
There you go.
I guess it's more over the what's it called? White Cord Virgin. The
Yeah.
Virgin.
Virgin.
Well, I have Vampire Heritage is always checked, but it's kind of I don't have it. I have it, but I don't have it because I can't really.
Okay.
I don't know, use it. So I guess I would put down the hungry because that's the one that's going to kind of screw the guy over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that, based on the way you've described your character,
would be-
should affect
yeah,
him.
right.
Yeah. So now I realize people may still be writing a little here, but let's just jump to the next spot, which is optional steps. So at this stage, you can define one or two more aspects that further define your character. Now that you know a bit more about your character, you can come up with a couple of more aspects if you like. And or buy up to 2 additional stunts. You may create stunts from scratch, which I think, again, we're going to skip for now. We're just going to order off the menu. And you may also select stunts. So you should be selecting stunts from your character's mantle. Each additional stunt you choose reduces your refresh by 1.
So, like,
Yeah.
creating a stunt, when I was reading the other Fate Core book,
Yeah.
one of them might be something like, and this might be appropriate for my character as the hunter fisher. When I focus, I never miss. Once per session, when I make a shot,
Or
it's
like
a headshot.
as the fisher, you could be the masturbator.
Yeah, or
What?
yes. So I'm not necessarily going to use that, but it could be if you think about something for your character that, like, basically once per hour or once per session, I want to be able to do something special and know it's going to succeed. I think that's the idea.
And what I would encourage is definitely try and come up with your own stunt, especially for something that you think really fits the character that you start to learn that it is. But just look at the way the book describes how to create a stunt, make sure it fits the guidelines, and then go for it. As long as you have any refresh points, you can add a stunt and reduce your refresh by 1.
Like, I would think one of mine, if I wanted it to be, could be I'm never the first one seen, or because of my camouflage, my rangery kind of.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
I don't
then you
necessarily-
need the verbiage and game mechanics that go around that.
Right.
And that's, for me, that would be the trickiest part of creating a stunt, is you're going to write something that fits along the lines of the stunts you've already seen.
Right.
The wild magic, the crazy-ass ninja moves, which is
Right.
probably a cooler name for the stunt, crazy-ass ninja moves. So if you want to come up with an extra aspect or two, and or buy up to 2 additional stunts. So the way they start character creation, by the way, is no matter what you've done, you should have at least 1 refresh point. Essentially, one refresh, which is 1 fate point every time we do a refresh. Clearly, they don't want you to start at 0. Now, I haven't seen anything that says you can't have 0, but that might be a detriment to playing when you first start, because then you can't actually use a fate point until one.
It says your character's refresh can never be allowed to go below 1.
Where'd you see that?
Page 95.
Nice. Okay, so I'm on 96. That's why I missed it. Good job, Mickie.
Yay.
Look at you, rules lawyer.
So we've got most of the core for our characters.
Yeah.
We have a week before we play again.
Yeah.
If we find something that we like, as we have time to look at this a lot better, we can presumably change it. In my case, I've got 2 aspects left that I can create, or stunts that I can buy. I'm going to hold off because I don't know what I want to do yet.
So we're going to wrap this one up with just a quick preview of what should be coming next. Our next hour that our listeners hear should be us kicking off our first adventure, which is, again, it is a one-shot that I've already prepared with a clear mission and clear ending. And once we go through that, we'll learn a little bit more of what our characters are capable of. And at that point, we'll talk about character modification and see if anybody wants to tweak it as we start to introduce the campaign world that we have already started creating. So I think at this point, we're going to say our character creation is done, and we will flesh them out in gameplay.
Sounds good.
However, if anybody, to your point, Kurt, if anybody reads the book or the information in between, which I think to date has never happened, if that does happen and you want to make a change before we start, make that change and be ready to start with it. That way we don't need to talk a lot more about characters before we click the go button on our actual adventure. But with that, let's...
So we went from absolutely butt-fuck nothing
Yeah.
to a world and
Yes.
4 characters in 2 or 3 hours.
I've never heard nothing described in that way before.
But fuck. Nothing.
Nothing, yes.
Way I roll.
As
Heard of
BFN.
butt fuck
As
Egypt?
BFN. So the other thing I do want to do as part of our first session, part of our first adventure, is I will be asking some questions like we did on the one-shot.
Okay.
They won't be the same questions, but what it will be is building us into the first adventure. Questions like, I'll have a question similar to like, two of you are here on purpose. The other two came along for some reason. What's that reason? Right? Things like that. And we'll bring those pieces together because we have a little bit of a link of how the characters know each other in some way or another. But when we start our first adventure, the four are actually going to be doing something together, and we will bring into light why they are there and doing that thing. And that's how we'll beginning. That's how we will begin our
I need
first
to get a better
adventure.
link from my character to the other characters.
Yeah, and we can come up with all that as we get started. In the meantime, we sincerely hope that you have enjoyed listening to 3 hours approximately of how we actually get started from zero to ready to go in a new role-playing game system, Dresden Files Accelerated. Anybody want to add anything?
No, it's been fun, and I like this method
Like
of
the collaboration,
world creation.
yeah.
I like the idea that we know something about the characters before day one of adventure.
And if you're in Europe just using us as English practice, we're glad that you're listening.
It's nice. Nice. Chris, what do you want to add?
Nothing. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mickie. Something insightful.
There's nothing to add that would increase the enjoyability of this episode.
Very well. I will click the stop button and we can all say...
Au revoir.
Au revoir, mes amis.
Paka.
The preceding podcast was brought to you by One Joe Young. You can find us online at adventuresfromtheshed.com.